Attention wrestling fans, the WFIA is holding a convention virtually this year, 2024, from September 13th through September 15th. If you are a WFIA member, cost is only $15 per session. If you want the deluxe package with all the sessions, WFIA members, $100. Not bad. Stars that are scheduled to appear are the world's strongest man, Ken Patera, the world's most dangerous announcer, Gary Michael Capetta, Bill Apter, the High Flyers, Greg Gagne and Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, Luscious, Lars Anderson, Les Thatcher, the son of the Dean of Announcers, Gennard Soley, the third man, James Beard, former WWE referee legend, Dave Dwinell, and the Queens, Darla Staggs, Barbara Goodish, and Pamela Morrison. Folks, run, don't walk to your keyboard and register today. If you are a non-WFIA member, the cost per session is $20, and the complete package is $130. Folks, become a WFI member today. It's easy to join, and membership is free. Go to WFIA.org today to register and become a member today. Welcome to another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I am Brian Ferguson. My guest today is a wrestler that has, to me, made an impact, not at the WWE, AEW, but at the indie level. He is currently the Impact Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. Not Impact, not the one out of Canada. This is the one in Iowa. And I want to introduce my good friend and comrade in arms, if you will, James Jeffries. James, thanks for coming on tonight.
Hey, thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me, man. It's always good to catch up with you, and I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Yeah, and this is about 4 weeks from now. We're gonna have Waterloo, the Hall of Fame up there, the George Tragos Luthez Hall of Fame event up in Waterloo, up there at the museum. And this is going to be my first year coming in there. And I'm actually bringing my wife. My wife wants to go. So I'm excited about it. I've heard a lot of good things. Tell us a little bit. You've been there a number of years at Waterloo. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
So, yeah, I'm glad to hear you and your wife are coming to the event. The George Tragos Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame is part of the Dan Gable Museum there in Waterloo, Iowa, where Dan Gable is from. And I feel over the years it's been a really fantastic, really fan-friendly type of a weekend. It's been so cool to see it grow and see, the different wrestlers and, announcers and, various people involved with pro wrestling get inducted. I think we always joke sometimes, it's like the best kept secret in pro wrestling, because not a lot of people have heard of Waterloo or even the weekend, but right. I mean, the induction ceremony to the fan fest, the wrestling show, I mean, it's really a weekend, different podcasts, live there at the museum. It's just, I feel a weekend that has something for everybody. And that I think if you are a wrestling fan, you should definitely put it on your bucket list, because I mean, just some of the history that's in the museum is not just from Iowa or Minnesota or, the Midwest area. I mean, it's from
Mhm.
everywhere,
Yeah.
and from various periods of time. So it's, I
Yeah.
mean, I can't say enough good about that weekend. I feel like it's a family atmosphere, and it's kind of everybody coming together for a great big family reunion.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, James, I've talked to some people that have attended it, both wrestlers and fans, and they say, that is probably the best, like you said, kept secret. It's not really that expensive to attend the events. I mean, you buy the grand ticket, you get everything for the whole weekend, and and I've heard a lot of good things. Like, from what I understand too, is that the wrestlers, I think, are a little more. How do I want to say it? The ones that are doing Fan Fest now, they're really more relaxed. They're willing to more engage and dialogue with the fans more. They don't. You're not feel like you're being rushed through, like you're herding cattle into the dairy barn to get milked, and gotta I got a sign, we gotta go because I got you got a line, and I've heard a lot of great things, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking. I got to ask you though. I want to circle back to you because that's why you're here tonight. We're going to talk about you now.
Oh
Talk
goodness.
about Yeah. Let's talk about your career. Okay, from done a little research on you. You're not that old. You graduated high school in 2007.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you are only 2 years older than my oldest. Well, she's my only daughter, but my oldest child.
Very nice.
She graduated in '09, and tell us a little bit about your journey as getting involved in this business and how it kind of all started for you.
Sure, absolutely. Um, I was just I'd watch wrestling with my dad on TV growing up, watch some Monday Night Wars, and
Mhm.
really, that's something we had in common, was watching it together. And then as I got to high school, I'm like, man, I really want to wrestle. I just it was always my dream. So,
Mhm.
and this is probably 2006. I didn't know that there were the independents. I thought,
Okay.
at the time, OVW had their developmental school and their TV show. I
Right.
thought, you go to OVW, you go right to WWE. I was just very naive that there were so
Yeah.
many of these little independents around. And
Right.
so I went to a show up in Rochester, Minnesota,
Okay.
and they had some different there, but Baron von Raschke was signing autographs. And
Mhm.
I met the Baron up there, and I asked him, I said, hey, how do you get into wrestling, or what's the best avenue? He goes, give me your name and your phone number. And he said, there's a guy named Brad Reinigans that trains up here in Minnesota,
Yeah.
and um, he's over in Japan right now. So what I'll do is I'll get his address, and you can write him a letter, and hopefully he gets back to you. He said, I'll call you down the road with his address, but don't wait by your phone, because it's tough to
Yeah.
get a hold of him since he was overseas. But
Right.
he called me like 2 weeks later, the Baron did, and said, hey, I
Wow.
got Brad's information. And so I wrote him a letter, and Brad was no longer training guys. So
Okay.
he just said, hey, I'm no longer taking students. So then Baron von Raschke said, hey, go down to Harley Race and check out his school. So
Yeah.
I went down with my dad and my brother Keith to check out Harley's school down there in Eldon.
Eldon.
And
Yep.
I went down there, and Harley was very nice to me. And, Baron von Raschke too, like, him calling my house and just kind of pointing me in the right direction. I got a ton of respect for Barron. And and so I went down to see Harley, and at the time I was a bit small for Harley's school.
Yeah.
And, you know, he showed me around and, you know, but he just said, you're just not quite big enough right now. So I came back home, and, you know, it's getting to be about graduation time. And, you know, I'd been down to see Harley, been to that independent show. And on the news, a lot of my teachers at school were telling me, hey, there's going to be a segment on a wrestling school out of Algona, Iowa, on KIMT this Friday at 7:00. So I tuned in, and it was TS Aggressor and Troy Peterson's Impact Pro Wrestling out of Algona, Iowa. And it was a, you know, probably a half-hour segment on their school, their promotion, and then they had a, you know, a commercial that played a couple times, you know, during the newscast that night.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So I can remember thinking, man, that's great. They have something right here in Iowa. You know, now fast forward, Harley Race at the time in 2007 was doing the Hall of Fame show for the George Tragos Luthez Hall of Fame. And he was running the wrestling show. So I went down to watch the show, you know, and say hello to Harley. And in the crowd was TS Aggressor, and they were actually using TS's ring. So I did not know this at the time, but TS had worked for Harley and was also trained by Brad Reiningans. So it's kind of a little bit of a dot connecting start for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, what a small world. And I talked to TS, you know, Travis that night, and he goes, hey, come up, check out our school, see what you think. So I went up and checked out the school in Algona, and I started with them. I graduated in May of 2007 from high school, and I started training with TS in August of 2007. So I tried to get in right away at 18 years old. So
hello, everyone. This is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I want to tell you about a new podcast out called Falls Count Anywhere. It is a classic pro wrestling podcast that brings you the legends of wrestling with true wrestling fans Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. They bring on guests that are legends in this business, as well as wrestlers of today, promoters, referees, you name it. They have them on there, folks. And I encourage you to listen to them. If you're on YouTube, watch them. They drop every Saturday. They have their podcast. They drop it in the afternoon. So look forward to that podcast coming out. Falls Count Anywhere podcast with Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. Folks, you will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And enjoy the podcast. Yeah, I was going to ask you what I've heard stories when you don't expect to what you get on day one, like the bumps, the hitting the ropes, things like that. It's kind of a culture shock. Is that what you experienced as well, James?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was so nervous. You know, the first day I showed up, there were 8 guys, and I'm the smallest of the 8 guys, and all the other guys are over 6 feet tall and in real good shape and whatnot. And, you know, the first day, like you said, you do some, you know, some bumping and different conditioning drills. And, you know, we started with 8 and only 2 of us finished training school, you know. It was myself and then another guy named the Big Picture, who wrestles and has wrestled for IPW for years, you know, as well. But you know, it it was, hey, the journey to get your foot in the door, but it wasn't just getting your foot in the door. And Travis, and then another guy who was assistant trainer named Johnny Fitness. Those were the guys that trained me. They were very, very good with us all. And they really were great with helping us navigate through the different drills, learn the different holds. They just really took care of you, and they really worked with you to make, to help so you could understand it. It's a lot to digest. I mean, so
a lot of conditioning and a lot of things you got to learn very quickly. One, so you don't get hurt, and two, because you don't want to hurt the person that you're wrestling against. It's all about timing and conditioning. And I've heard stories where guys, it took, they hit the ropes so much that they had all these like cuts in their back, but then eventually their skin got so conditioned that it was like leather.
And they say, hey, a lot of this is going to be unnatural to you. You just need reps and reps and reps. And I can remember too, TS told me early on, he said, hey, this is for everybody. He goes, you will get out of this what you put into it. So the more you're here training and the more you apply yourself, you'll get out of it what you put into it. So
I want to ask you this, James, since you said you were the smallest guy, do you think the others that didn't finish were a little overconfident and thought this wasn't going to be as challenging as it was? Or was it another factor maybe? I mean, sometimes people get hurt. I understand that. But, I mean, it's kind of like some of these other things you see that these people go in, they're supposed to be all Mr. Fitness and solid as a rock, they're fit to fiddle. And then they last a week and they wash out because they just can't handle it.
I definitely, Go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, go ahead.
I was going to, I think that was, I think it was hey, we're not sure what we got into. And, maybe, some other things prevented them from their journey, but, at the time. But I think it, for all of us, it was, okay, it's real now. Here's the first day, and then you got all these days after. And, it was, they were very upfront with what it took. So,
Well, that's good. I wanted to ask you this. So you complete your training. How long was your training? How long would it last for?
My training, I was in 6 months, I had my first match, and I probably, I kept training for about a year, I would say. Totally was my training.
Okay. And your first match, I'm sure there's butterflies and nervousness and did you do it there in Iowa or did you travel? Okay. Who was your first opponent?
My first opponent was Anthony Draven, and it was in Muscatine, Iowa in 2008. It was in Muscatine, Iowa, and it was at a place called the Fiesta Dance Hall.
All right.
So, it was like a bar slash kind of, they had wedding receptions and different things there. But and I remember the whole day, and it was a lot of fun. You work so hard in wrestling school, and that's kind of, that's the reward, is to finally get in there and wrestle. And I could just remember thinking to myself too, like, oh my goodness, it's go time, and you have to to perform. And, kind of going back to like the different, conditioning and the different drills, Impact Pro Wrestling, they just really prepared me, and they really prepared us before we ever got in the ring. But, on the day of, you're the only guy that can go out there, you can't go through it with your trainers. You got to go out there and do your best. So, yeah.
Wow. Did you win or draw?
I lost.
Your first win? It's okay.
I took the poison mist right to the face and got beat.
Oh, that's great. Let me ask you this. How much traveling have you done? Have you worked for other organizations, or have you just mainly stayed in Iowa, or you branched out some? Talk about that a little bit, if you would, please.
Sure. Yeah. Mostly wrestled around here in the Midwest. I wrestled for Steel Domain Wrestling, MAW Wrestling there in Minnesota. I wrestled for James Beard down in Texas for SWE Wrestling.
Okay.
Herb Simmons and SICW. I've worked for Herb a few times. But most of my wrestling I've got through Impact Pro Wrestling. Did an OVW camp when they were still developmental with WWE. Wrestled in Vegas for CAC. So got out a little bit, but mostly stayed around here. A lot of Impact Pro Wrestling has kept me pretty busy, and then Steel Domain and MAW, I wrestled for them quite a few times. So.
Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson. Fans of the AWA, you are in for a real treat. My friend Joyce Poston has just released her book titled My Ringside Seat to the AWA. Joyce writes about her personal experiences with wrestlers such as Nick Bockwinkel, Lord Alfred Hayes, Baron Von Raschke, and others. Joyce also has published many photos from her collection that you will not see anywhere else. Order today by email at joyce.poston@gmail.com. Payment is through PayPal. The book is only $20 plus $6 shipping and handling. International orders, please email Joyce for shipping charge. Folks, run, don't walk to your keyboard, and order today. And enjoy the podcast. Yeah, I remember meeting you. You probably don't remember this, but this was at CAC in 2022. You were at a table with James Beard. I don't think Jerry Briscoe was there, but you were promoting the Hall of Fame there, the George Tragos Luthez, talking about that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I talked to you for a few minutes, you and James, and I was intrigued. And then I saw you last year for a minute. And then I saw you again here in St. Louis at this Fan Fest about a month ago. And I'm just really impressed with you. You seem you're kind of like called silent but deadly. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, thank you.
You're quiet, but yet when you get in that ring, you do what you need to do and get the results. So that's what I like about you. You just seem you don't seem like a wrestler, which is a good thing. It kind of might psychs people out, I guess, if they don't know you that well. When you get in the ring with them, they're like, oh, okay, well, it's this guy don't look. And then all of a sudden,
yeah.
And so other titles, currently you are the Impact Pro Wrestling IPW Heavyweight Champion.
Mm-hmm.
Have there other titles that you've had working other places, like SICW, or you talk about working for James down in Texas or up in Steel Domain? Have you tag teams or anything like that? Or
never have. No, only for Impact Pro Wrestling. So
okay.
Myself and a guy named Clay Cooper, we were the New Midnight Rockers for a short time up, up for Steel Domain. So we had a couple tag title shots, but
yeah,
we were not victorious. But you know, there's still you know, good memories and
yeah.
But yeah, only been champion here in Iowa for IPW. So
Well, I mean, hey, I think you've earned it, and I wanted to congratulate you. When did you win that title, by the way?
the world heavyweight title.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won that. Gosh, I know it was in Des Moines, and it was one of our last Forte shows. So I want to say it was like February of 2023.
Okay, so a little over a year you've had the title.
Yep.
Okay, well that's great. I mean, I'm just excited to get up there and see this and see you and I want to talk a little bit about Steel Domain if I could.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still running shows anymore. I thought I heard they shut down, but I'm not 100%. But I heard a lot of good things about Steel Domain up in Minnesota up there. I know Mick Karch was a announcer there or a commentator for a while there. I think George Shire. Do you know George Shire?
Yes, I do.
He was involved in it for a little while, and George Shire is a good friend of mine, and he speaks highly of you. When I said I was going to do this with you.
Oh, and well, tell him thank you. You know,
I will.
Looking forward to seeing him again, but
he'll be in Iowa. I know Friday he's going to be there for the day. Yeah,
good.
Yeah. So, but did your interactions? Have you ever your interactions, Steel Domain, and all that? Has anybody that you've known in those indies gone up to AEW, WWE, Impact up in Canada? Do you know anybody personally that has got to that level? Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson. I want to tell you about a great book written by my good friend, Mr. George Shire. It's called Minnesota's Golden Age of Wrestling from Vern Gagne to the Road Warriors. George dives deep into the golden age of wrestling, starting with the 1950s, talking about Lou Thez, Vern Gagne, Wilbur Schneider, and many others, and goes all the way deep into the AWA and into the 1980s, ending with the tag team domination of the Road Warriors. Now, this book includes photos of George's personal collection, as well as programs and sports facts that was published for many years. So go to Amazon today or the Minnesota Historical website and get this book as soon as you can. And folks, enjoy the podcast.
You know, personally, not personally, I've had a couple friends get real close. My friend, you know, R.A.I. Daivari, I don't know him very well, but I was around him quite a bit at Steel Domain before he went to WWE. But my friend Nikki Free, do you remember him at all?
He sounds familiar. I'd have to see his face, but yeah.
He was one of 10 people in the whole nation that got to do a tryout with WWE at the Arnold Classic. And he did Extra Talent a few times. So he's probably my dearest friend that's been the closest. I actually also, I've, you know, the vault down here in Iowa, our training school, the same one that I went to, I've helped coach at, you know, and I became a trainer in 2018 for the same wrestling school I went to. You know, me and TS ended up doing it. But actually, the Hale twins, do you know who they are?
I've heard of them, yeah.
So they were on AEW Dark. And then, so they're two of my students. And ZK47 wrestled as Isaiah Harris He just wrestled on Ring of Honor for AEW like 2 weeks ago. So,
Okay.
you know, a couple that have had opportunities, I would say. Not anybody who's got signed. But gosh, it was super cool seeing my buddy Nick on WWE a couple times, and certainly cool to see you know, the Hale twins and Zay. You know, just you know, it's kind of cool to see, you know, just from a training aspect and from a coaching aspect. It's cool to see when students you've worked with get opportunities like that. Now, they did it themselves. You know what I'm saying? I just really enjoyed being a part of their journey, and to see them perform on TV for their dream is just, I don't know, it's real cool. You know, I mean, I think all of us, you know, have or had at one time the dream to do that, you know, and it's cool, you know, because it's so hard to make it and to make it on TV. So it's just, you know,
especially these days, it's you know, when I was a kid, I'm quite a bit older than you, but when I was a kid in the 80s, it was still difficult, but prior to the WWF expansion in '84, you had more opportunities to get into a territory and to take advantage of an opportunity. If you may not have worked out in one territory, that promoter might call another one, say, "Hey, this guy is good. You know, he's not quite the fit we have here, but I want to send him to you and maybe develop him there. And I think he's a good fit for you." And that's how it worked. And you saw a lot more guys, men and women, I shouldn't just say guys, but wrestlers get on TV, make themselves well known, that maybe they didn't make it in Georgia, but they went up to Minneapolis, the AWA, and it clicked.
Oh yeah.
And they made a household name for themselves. And I really miss that, because guys like yourself, you know, and others that are in Impact Pro and these other indies, you know, there's so many great, there really are. I mean, I'm going to a show tomorrow night here in Springfield, Missouri. It's Mid-States Wrestling. You probably know Jason Jones, the Space Cowboy.
Yes, I do. He's a great guy.
He's having great guy. Just called me about an hour ago.
Yeah.
You know, we were for tickets for tomorrow night. I bought one for a friend, and I wanted to make sure we sat next to each other. But
Absolutely.
my point is, these shows, you know, the indies, I think for a lot of years were getting a bad rap. You had some outlaw promoters that really put a bad taste in people's mouth about indie wrestling. But I will say, to me personally, and to a lot of people, in the last probably 10 years, it has grown so much in a positive way that I think it's just as popular now. It's not on TV, unfortunately, like I think it should be, but I think it's as popular and a heck of a lot cheaper to go to those events than the AEWs and WWEs. Like your Impact Pro Wrestling.
Yep.
You guys put on a great card. I mean, I haven't been to one, but I've heard stories, and I'm going to go to that one in Iowa next month, and I know it's going to be a great show. And I don't mean to get my soapbox here, but guys like yourself, I just feel like are hindered, constrained, however you want to say it, to not get that exposure that I really think you deserve.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I appreciate you saying that. And you know, I'm glad you brought up something about the indies, you know, and circling back to Steel Domain. Steel Domain's a fantastic indie. MAW is a fantastic independent. And I agree with you. 10 years ago, the independents were kind of looked at, I think, as you do that indie wrestling, you know. Now you have so many good indies out there, and there were good indies out there 10 years ago. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
The Steel Domain,
Right.
they were going for years, but I feel the independents are so much more intimate, and there's so many good ones. STW, MAW, SICW, Mid States Wrestling, Impact Pro Wrestling. There's a lot of good wrestling and good wrestlers out there. And I kind of feel too that the independents have helped some of the stuff on WWE too. Like, I think WWE took a lot of the stars from the indies, and how they found them, I don't know, different tryouts or seeing them on YouTube. You got so many different avenues to watch wrestling now. But man, I mean, there's just so many wrestlers wrestling every weekend. And I'll say this too, like for myself, my wrestling dream over time changed. Earlier on, I was trying to make it to WWE. I was trying to make it a lot more. And, like I was mentioning, in 2018, I got the opportunity to do coaching alongside with TS. And I feel that my wrestling dream turned out, I think, the way it was supposed to. And I feel very grateful that, I met my wife through Impact Pro Wrestling. We have a son named Carrie, and it changed, it morphed over the years. And, I think some people's dreams do. And, but I also think too, anybody who wants to make it wrestling, just got to keep wrestling, keep getting your name out there. And it's a fantastic business. It's a fantastic business with a lot of fantastic people. And I'm getting on my soapbox here.
That's all right. No, you're supposed to talk. You keep talking.
I guess, I guess the point I was wanting to make is my dream morphed over time from wanting to make it on TV to helping in a coaching aspect and still getting to wrestle too, so I mean, I still get as much enjoyment out of it today as I did when I started.
Did you ever wonder what could have been with the AWA had things gone differently, had their fortunes gone differently, had certain wrestlers not left, and perhaps more money would have been at the disposal of the Gagnes? Well, wonder no further. You can go to Brad Drake's YouTube channel and experience the 1987 Supermod for yourself, as Brad Drake starts off in May 1987, along with Greg Gagne, Baron Von Raschke, Vern Gagne himself, Nick Bockwinkel, Larry Zbyszko, Kurt Hennig, and a slew of others as he plays and saves the AWA.
That's what counts. As long as you are enjoying what you are doing, that's what matters. As long as you enjoy it and have the passion to do it, that's what counts. To me, I'm sure to most people. I do this podcasting of wrestlers because I enjoy wrestling and I enjoy talking to wrestlers. I don't care if you're independent wrestling, you're a WWE guy, or you're a promoter, or you're you wrestle like Les Thatcher. I just talked to him today, and he's been in wrestling for over 60 years, but I just love talking to these people and gaining that knowledge and their experiences. And I don't know, I love doing this. And I haven't been doing it for too many years, about 4 years now. I've always started this, and
nice.
I just love talking to guys like you. I mean, this is your first time on the podcast. I'm glad you were able to come on, but I want to circle back a little bit now to your this match that's coming up in July with Rock Riddle.
Yes, sir.
I've got to. I'm not laughing because of who it is. I'm just laughing because Rock Riddle's quite a bit older than you, and I just was shocked when I saw that. I've never seen Rock Riddle wrestle, so can you kind of, if you would, give us a little background on your opponent coming up here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Rock Riddle, he's wrestled everywhere, and he is the original Mr. Wonderful. He's wrestled Andre the Giant. He's wrestled in world-class championship wrestling. He's wrestled the Briscoes. You name it, he's wrestled them all, for his entire career. And, Rock Riddle, just seeing some interviews and stuff on that, he got interviewed outside Jesse Hernandez's wrestling school. And, he was saying, James Jeffries, I want you in Waterloo and I want to take the belt back, never to be defended again, or whatever he says. You never know what he's going to say, because Rock Riddle is a tough individual and he means what he says, I feel. He definitely believes in himself, and he's no slouch, and I'm very honored to wrestle against him. And I mean, you name it, he's wrestled them, and he's still wrestling all these years later. He's 100%, and he's tough as nails. And I just think he's Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Hollywood. I mean, he's going to let you know that he's there. And I got an extremely tough task ahead of me. And I take it, I take it seriously, and he's an outrageous individuul, and I'm going to be ready for him in Waterloo. I'm pumped, and I just know that he's going to try every trick in the book to take the belt back with him to California.
Yeah. And I want to, I didn't mean to laugh. I was laughing because he is quite a bit older, and I've never seen the, and I don't mean to disrespect Rock Riddle. I'm sure he'll be watching this probably if he sees your name on the marquee there. But you're right. Most of these guys, if anything, they want to prove, and they got old man strength, and they're going to prove that I still can do the job. I can still get in the ring and take it to task. Now, I know you want to win. Obviously, you're the champ and want to retain that belt. So I want to wish you good luck. And I'm sure you're right. He's probably like a Ric Flair. He's the dirtiest player in the game, right? He'll use anything, do anything to win.
The world's strongest wrestler, okay? Now we got ourselves straight, huh? Huh? Get a flex, baby. Woo! Now we're talking business.
Well, I'll tell you what, there are a lot of people here who I'm sure have read about your exploits in the past, but I think for those who might not be familiar with you, let's go back, if we may, for just a couple of moments, high school, college, and then, of course, your fabulous career with the Olympics.
Everybody's talking about Tony Atlas down here for so many years about being the strongest wrestler in the world. Bruno Sammartino up in New York. Ivan Putski over in Poland. This guy, that guy. Well, you're looking at the men, the only man in professional sports that can legitimately say that he has gone to the Olympics, gone to the Pan American Games, set 54 world and international class records in weightlifting. So that qualifies me over all the rest of these so-called strong professional athletes. And the number one sport, the king of sports, is professional wrestling. So you people out there in TV land, Just listen up. This is the man that, the only man in the world to ever win 4 gold medals in the Pan American Games. The first man in history to lift 500 pounds over his head. That's not laying down on my back and doing a bench press, which is a sissy exercise. It's from the floor overhead. The only man in America to ever do it.
Wrestling fans, I want to invite you to join me, Brian Ferguson, at the virtual WFIA convention being held from September 13th through September 15th, 2024. First legend to make an appearance online at the convention is going to be the world's strongest man, Ken Patera. As many of you know, he is an Olympian. He is a Pan American Games gold medalist, has won numerous weightlifting and titles in wrestling, the second intercontinental champion ever. And folks, he's going to be with us from September 13th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Folks, if you are a WFIA member, you are going to be able to purchase an additional 30 minutes with Ken Patera before the main session for only an additional $10. Folks, if you're not a WFIA member, go to WFIA.org/join and become a member today and get online and register for this event. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to meet the world's strongest man, Ken Patera. Walk, don't run to your keyboard, pull out that smartphone, and get online and become a WFI member today.
Yep, and I know you weren't being disrespectful when you said that, because Rock Riddle, I mean, some of his promos and stuff, it's just
Right.
when you think of his name, it's like, man, this is wild that this match is even happening. So
Yeah.
I didn't, I'm sure he won't take it disrespectful, and I know what you meant. It's like, man, it's gonna be a tough task. He's a fantastic wrestler. He'll say whatever, he'll do all the dastardly tricks. I mean, he is just a colorful personality, and when you see him on a poster, when you see him on these events, you can see that he's over the top, and he's been in there with the absolute best. So I'm honored, and I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to, give it everything I got. And I'm super pumped. So,
all right. If you need a manager, you let me know. I'll slip in, and, I have a sports coat. I can just, slip in real quick and be your manager.
Well, if I'm getting beat down pretty bad, I'm going to be reaching through the tag, through the rope. So I'll be looking that the tag
looking for me. All right. Yeah. Okay.
So dive in, get the tag. Yeah. You'll probably have to drag me out at some point, because I'm telling you, Rock Riddle, he
ain't no joke.
No, he ain't no joke. He's as tough as they come.
Yeah. No, hey, do you have any other dates coming up here before or after Waterloo you'll be wrestling?
Yeah, I have July 13th down here in Bondurant, Iowa for Impact Pro Wrestling. That'll be a fun event. And then I'm trying to think what else I have coming up. I think that might be the only one. So I'm kind of been in a downtime here. Just, my wife and I just moved to another place, and I've been kind of running around moving stuff. So I've, been pretty clear schedule wise, but I know Impact Pro Wrestling has a lot of fair shows, starting the week of Hall of Fame, July 18th, 19th, and 20th. And then they have some shows. I believe they have one in Knoxville, the Monday night of Hall of Fame, or the Monday night before Hall of Fame. Okay. And then I think there's a couple the week after. So about mid-July, end of July, it'll start, picking up a little bit. So
yeah. Well, I want to thank you, James Jeffries, Impact Pro Wrestling heavyweight champion, for coming on and I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing you and the rest of the IPW wrestlers and and Waterloo and seeing Dan Gable Museum. Oh, I want to ask you one more question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so are you? How is your relationship with Dan Gable? And I'm asking because I want to ask this question about Mr. Gable, if possible.
Mhm.
Good. What I want to ask you is why do you ever or do you know why Dan Gable never got into pro wrestling?
Gosh, so like my relationship with him is, just a hello, good to see you again. I don't really know him that well, but I say
Okay.
hi to him every year.
Okay.
With I think I saw him talk about it on an interview.
Okay.
I believe he wanted to go more to the coaching side of things,
Okay.
and yeah, I believe that, wanting to go to the coaching side more so. I believe they did reach out to him, is my understanding, years
I'm sure
ago.
they did. Yeah.
And it would have been around the time, the Hogans and Andres and a lot of those guys. I think Dan Gable being such a fantastic wrestler, coaching, I think for him was what the avenue he wanted to go down. And I mean, you look at everything he's done with,
Oh, yeah.
University of Iowa and, that
Yeah.
museum too. They do so much for so many families around the
Yeah.
world that
Awesome.
he just Dan Gable, I mean, he's
Yeah.
a great guy. So definitely go up and say hello to him. Like
Oh, I am.
he
I am.
just is he's just a good human being, and he's a wrestling guy, kind of like you and I talking about the different wrestlers we like or different shows
Yeah.
we've been to. Dan Gable talks about that. I mean, his knowledge for wrestling and wrestlers, not just the famous ones, but guys that he saw in his coaching that were coming up that maybe didn't quite get to the level they wanted to, but man, he still remembers them, and he's just as sharp as can be. So
yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, one more time, ladies and gentlemen, Impact Pro Wrestling World Heavyweight Champion James Jeffries. Thank you for coming on, sir. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you having me, man. And it was good chatting it up with you. And, I just want to say real quick to every wrestling fan and everybody that I've coached and to Impact Pro Wrestling and all the other promotions that I've wrestled for. I just want to say thank you to them all. And they gave me so much joy over the years, and they continue to give me so much joy that I think, my life would have been very different. And I'm just I'm so pumped to see you in Waterloo, and I appreciate you having me on your podcast. It's just anybody who asks me to do a podcast, I really appreciate, because I don't feel I'm anybody special by any means. I just I appreciate you asking me all the questions and just having me on, and I love the world of wrestling and the people in it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, hey, it was my pleasure to have you on here. I was glad you accepted, and thank you for all you've done. You might not think you've contributed, but you really have. To the sport, to the independents. You're one of the reasons why independents are so popular again. It's not just white trash people. You know what I'm saying? It's I shouldn't say it like that, but prior to 10 years ago, it was just that's what the kind of name it had, and now it's back to where it should be, and it should have been the whole time. Is a great cards they put on, and they put on great shows, and they're not ripping people off, and they're putting on great, it's all quality and quantity. So
Absolutely.
guys like you that sweat, bleed for us, we appreciate you. So thank you right back at you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words, and man, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Just want to say, folks, if you're watching, thank you. If you're listening, thank you. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and we will talk to you soon.